Care to chat? Hello and welcome to this episode of the Northern Ireland Social Care Council's popular podcast, Care to Chat. I'm Wendy Austin and it's my great pleasure to host these podcasts, hearing the stories of social care practitioners and social workers and their clients, and hearing too about the many different and important aspects of the work itself. There's a huge range of situations in which they come into play, from domiciliary care to family situations and complex areas like criminal justice. The nature of social work practice is challenging and complex. Therefore, it's important to support professional development. So what does this look like in Northern Ireland? Well, a large part of that progression is through something called the Professional in Practice Framework, PiP it's known as, which supports post-qualifying training for social workers here. And it's unique to Northern Ireland, something which other countries and social work professionals would appreciate having in place. We're very lucky to have it, apparently. So let's find out more. With me are Gillian McAuley, Professional Advisor at the Social Care Council, McAnallen, Probation Officer, Probation Board for Northern Ireland, and Marita Magennis, who's Assistant Director, the Southern Health and Social Care Trust. So, Gillian, if I could come to you first, what exactly is the PiP Framework? What's its history and how does it work?
So the PiP Framework has been around now for almost 20 years. It had two predecessors, a UK-wide framework and then a Northern Ireland framework which is developed with devolution in Northern Ireland. The PiP Framework really is a sort of trellis or a construction that allows postgraduate social workers to continue with their professional development, but also have that recognised then by the Social Care Council as the regulator. So the Social Care Council is the awarding body for the Professional in Practice Framework. And that means that along with academic qualifications that a social worker might achieve during their profession or their PiP journey, they can also then get recognition from us as the awarding body. It's quite a big framework. It has 4 awards within it and it has 4 different routes to achievement, and it covers lots of wide and various elements. But that reflects the diversity and the scope of the social work profession in Northern Ireland. And I think that the framework is really designed to support social workers regardless of what area of practice they're working in, to continue to develop through their career, but also then have that recognised by us as the regulator, so that their achievements and their development throughout their career are acknowledged by us and their progression is acknowledged by us.
It sounds quite complicated. Does it look complicated from where the person who's involved in it is sitting, if you know what I mean?
It can look a bit complicated, and I think that's something that sometimes social workers don't know where to start when they want to engage with the framework. So since 2011, there is a compulsory component to the framework. So any social worker who registers with us since 2011 has a mandatory component to do within the framework. But after that, it's really up to social workers to decide with their employer usually what best suits them. So we have a big academic route with over 21 approved programmes, and that covers a wide range of things, right from newly qualified social work to palliative care, to practice teaching, to leadership and management programmes, to specialist probation programmes. So that really is a route that allows social workers to achieve up to master's level after their degree within an academic situation, but also then have recognition by ourselves. But that's only one element of 4. So across the framework then, there are work-based learning route options where employers often build courses and have those recognised by ourselves. And then we have an individual assessment route and a credit accumulation route. And those recognise social workers who are learning within their own job, really, and are supported by their employer to have that submitted to ourselves and assessed, and they can get recognition for that. So you can see by how I'm talking that is, there are a lot of options for social workers, and that reflects the diversity of the profession, really. But people have to just focus on the bit that's relevant to them at that point in their career. You know, there are only a very few of us involved in the PiP world who need to know the full scale and scope of it. Most people only need to know what's relevant to them and the bit that they're working on in that point in time.
Well, I'm glad we got you with us today then, given that that's the case. Annie, you're at the moment a participant in the PiP programme, so you're looking at it from that perspective, which is very useful for us here today. I mean, what's your first memory of hearing about it and of engaging in the framework?
Okay, so I, back in 2016, the Probation Board offered a module on decision making and risk taking. So the Probation Board have their own specialist route through the PiP framework. So back at that time, I decided to take on that module, and I have to say it was quite daunting at the time. I had been a social worker for about 15 years, and getting back into academic learning and putting yourself in that position was quite a challenge. But it gave me a real opportunity to look at how I was doing my work, how I was making the decisions, how I was carrying out risk assessments. It allowed me to look very specifically at some cases that had given me some food for thought. So that opportunity really prompted my interest in the PiP framework. So I then, after 2016, I then moved in and did the practice teaching programme. I'd always wanted to be a practice teacher ever from I was a student. I had wonderful practice teachers, so I wanted to be able to do that, moving forward. So I got into practice teaching, and then after I finished the practice teaching course, I got into our learning and development team. And after that, I was asked to take over the rollout of trauma-informed practice in the service. And at that time, the probation service were offering an opportunity to do the research methods programme. So I was able to combine the research and the training and use the information from the research to help with the training, and I rolled out the training programme for our organisation. I did the 3 years of the research methods course, and then after that I did a course on quality improvement, looking at risk assessment, and produced an aid memoir for our staff. And then after that I looked at the community development course. So that's where I am now.
So you got completely hooked?
I got completely hooked by it. I have to say I did. Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating hearing Annie there, because she obviously, here was this opportunity and it just opened up a whole different world to her, Marita. And for you in your role as assistant director, I mean, Gillian was talking about how you can set different ways of workplace learning and so on. Of what benefit is it to you to have the PiP framework there in place for your staff, and I'm guessing for yourself still?
Absolutely. The PiP framework, I think, is, I suppose, a foundation stone of our profession. And I feel really privileged, and I love the way Annie describes it as an opportunity, because it's a great gift, I think, within our profession, and to be so flexible and so responsive to the breadth of the profession, I think is fabulous. I suppose from an employer's perspective, it really provides us with a quality benchmark in terms of our workforce. So that's really important in terms of us being assured that the staff we have who are out delivering those really critical services are equipped to undertake that role to the highest quality. And I think that, I suppose for me, that's really important when we think about creating confidence within our workforce. We work in a very complex climate and dynamic, both within our teams and beyond. So it's really important that our staff are confident in the work that they do. But also it's really important that the general public have confidence in us as well. So that, I think the framework provides us with a really effective benchmark in relation to that. I suppose the other bit I think that it offers us is an opportunity to ensure that we are credible, both in terms of the general public and our multi-professional colleagues. And I think in many ways we are the envy of many professional groupings to have such a framework which really gives us an effective structure. And I suppose the other thing, we are currently, looking at responding to a recruitment crisis and making sure that we have enough social workers to do the work that we need. And what we know and understand is that career development is a really important cornerstone to encouraging people to come into the workforce. And so we are really grateful that we have the PiP framework there, which really evidences our commitment to that.
And it is interesting, isn't it? There are a lot of organisations that kind of pay lip service to the idea of continuing development, but it's not always that easy to actually tap into it. But this is all there, isn't it? And people are not just encouraged, but actually it's a part of their job to keep on with the development, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, within our recruitment processes, it is seen as an important element. So you will often see in job specifications a requirement to have progressed to a certain level in relation to the PiP framework. And I think that is really important, and that we move, as you say, beyond that lip service. So it's really about seeing how this training and development manifests in our practice. And I think that's a really important piece that organisationally, and I suppose for our workforce, it can feel like an add-on and something else that needs to be done. But a really important message is that actually the reason we're doing this is to improve our practice and our services for the people that we serve. And also, I suppose, the piece around in making a commitment to do these programmes, we are strengthening our teams. We're bringing that knowledge back in. So it's not you're not serving one, you're serving many in undertaking this work, which I think is really valuable.
When Marita said there, it can feel like an add-on, but actually, Annie, the way you described it, you obviously found it as a beneficial tool in a way as well. You said that it made you kind of look at some of the decisions that you'd made and come to whatever conclusion you came to about them. But did it feel like an add-on to you at any stage?
It's an add-on in terms of it's a requirement that you do. It takes up a lot of your own time, but in terms of developing your own professional knowledge, skills and values, it's well worth taking that time to do that. So anyone going into the PiP framework needs to accept that there is a sacrifice in terms of your personal time, but it is well worth it in terms of developing your capability as a social worker, and as Marita said, the value that brings to your teams and particularly to the people that we serve and the wider community. It's well worth that time.
And Marita talked about confidence in both directions, confidence of the social worker and confidence in the social worker from the community. There are another couple of C's involved in all of this as well, Gillian, aren't there, in the PiP framework?
Yes, so I suppose it's also about, competence and capability. And, as the regulator, we're really keen that, the general public and other professionals really see social workers as leaders in the work that they are doing. And throughout a social worker's career, that is the framework provides a way of doing that and developing that. You don't just get your undergraduate qualification and you're a social worker and that's the knowledge base that you take through the rest of your career. We wouldn't want to go to a doctor or a nurse who hadn't developed further since the day they got their qualification. And I think social work is a relatively young profession, and so we have some way to go in terms of understanding that. But also, I suppose, a bit like Annie, I have done a lot within the PiP framework, and I think it's about, it really gives you confidence as a practitioner. Especially a lot of social workers come into social work a little bit anxious about their power and the role that they have and the seriousness of it. And certainly I was one of those social workers when I qualified, and going through, a different but similar route to Annie in terms of, engaging in the programmes at an early stage, becoming a practice teacher. I think that is a real privilege as a social worker to help the next generation of social workers into the profession and support them. So I think there's a real, if you see your career, with its longevity, because we tend to stay around for a long time and people move around more now than they used to. Continuing to learn and becoming an expert and having the confidence that you're an expert and being able to articulate that to other professionals and for your service users and carers, who ultimately is what the PiP framework is for. It's to ensure that they are getting the best service that they can. So to be able to project that level of competence and confidence and capability, learning is a real key to that. And I suppose for us, that link between the learning that social workers do and then the recognition that they get from us as the regulator. And similar to what Marita was saying, it gives us confidence in the practitioners that are out there as the regulator, someone who is active within the PiP framework. We can be confident that they are out there practising safely, and that they have the knowledge to do their job.
There's lots of nodding going on here, which if you're listening to it, you're not going to be able to hear. But I suppose what that underlines as well is that this gives a real credibility, because social work takes a bit of a pasting sometimes, doesn't it, Marita? And, if people know that this is the kind of foundation, if you like, of what's going on, and that you continue to build on it in everyone's career, that makes quite a difference.
Absolutely. I think it is. It's so important that we build confidence from a public perspective. I mean, very often we are working with families at their most vulnerable time in their lives. And so the least we can do is to bring confidence and help them understand that we know what we're about and why we're intervening in their families, and that we can help them to make things better. So I think that is really, really important. And I suppose the other thing, just as we're talking there, that I think is really critical to this is that organisationally, I think we have a responsibility to support our workforce on this journey, in order that they are, I suppose, facilitated to take up these opportunities. And I think we have made great strides in recent years in terms of the infrastructure that is available to support staff in undertaking the role, and that is really critical. And I think we've got better at celebrating the successes and sharing the knowledge across, both internally within organisations and externally, which I think is really important.
I mean, but there are lots of different organisations involved, as we've been hearing, and from your point of view, Marita, if you were talking to employers who maybe are not quite as far along the road of this as you are, let's say, I mean, how do you persuade them that it is important to engage with PiP for the ongoing development of their workforce?
Absolutely. I think in terms of other organisations, and I appreciate the trusts are probably a bit further, we've got a larger infrastructure to support us. But I think a few of the cornerstones I think there's something about leading by example. So you really do want to see that the leaders in the organisation have participated in this and really celebrate that. I think that is a really important piece. And also then that we recognise that personal input that goes into this, and how do we... I mean, there are limitations in how we can recognise and compensate for that. But I think creating a sense of value, that we really do value people using their time to progress in this way, and then to celebrate the successes, making sure that the learning goes beyond, as Annie was saying, beyond that piece around my individual practice, but actually realising that you are making a massive contribution to the wider social work profession, both within your organisation and beyond. And that's really a very empowering, I think, message for staff. And I think if organisations can tap into that is really valuable.
And you have PiP representatives, isn't that right? Would you be one of those, Annie?
I used to be, Wendy.
And whenever you were, how did you and how do you now, because I can't imagine that you don't talk about it still, but how do you champion PiP in your role and encourage other people to get involved?
As Marita said, leading by example. I think you have to experience the process yourself, understand the nuances, the challenges of that. And I think when you're speaking from your own experience, that's really helpful to supporting your colleagues. Another way to support your colleagues is to make yourself available, provide a mentor and coaching role. I like to help the colleagues that I'm working with to access the right literature, have conversations, help guide them in terms of their writing. So just being available, being open, and sometimes just being a listening ear when it can get challenging when you're coming up to those submission points. Just being a listening ear and allowing your colleague to process that, and champion them on and tell them it is worth it when you get through. That is really worth that. So.
Well, you must be a great role model for people that you work with when they see the different directions in which you've allowed the framework to take you, if I could put it like that. I mean, when you started, had you any idea that might be the result?
Not at all. When I started, I was really quite worried about getting back into that framework, working at that academic level, felt quite vulnerable in that process. But I think that's maybe what spurred me on, and I really have to say I really thoroughly enjoyed that very first module that I did. I found I was able to make real links between the literature and the academic learning to my actual practice, and I was able to, that opportunity to critically reflect and really think deeply about what I was doing. I found that really empowering and very validating, and in terms of confidence building, it was one of the best experiences that I had, and then that prompted me on. But I've also been very fortunate that our service, the Probation Services, has offered those opportunities. I've been able to avail of those opportunities. It's allowed me to move in the directions that I have moved in. It has guided me, and then I've been able to bring my learning back into the workforce and support my colleagues in that. So it has been really useful in terms of my career progression.
I mean, Annie talked, Gillian, about the fact that she found it quite daunting to go back into that kind of academic learning and so on. But of course, if you're starting as a social worker now, you were saying that there's a sort of compulsory component, which struck me as being a bit like a foundation degree, and then it sort of opens the doors to you. What difference do you think that has made as far as new social workers are concerned, that well, you just got to do it, and everybody's going to get on with it?
Yeah. Well, I think for some people, it puts them off a bit when they're thinking that they have to do something, and for some people, it can feel very daunting. They've just come out of their degree. They're now told they're going to be assessed at postgraduate level. That can be daunting for people. But I think the reality is there's so much support available for the vast majority of social workers in terms of how they engage with that. And also it dips people's toe in the PiP world. So there will be lots of people out there who thought, I can never, achieve at postgraduate level. But those two initial requirements help people to see that actually I can do this. And then they'll maybe start to work towards finishing an award. And once someone has engaged in that, then the PiP reps play a key role in helping people map out their journey then through their career. So, do you want to take the route that Annie and I did and become practice teachers and go into the learning and development world? Or do you want to do something much more specialist in your own area of practice? And I suppose there's a real key moment there for people to kind of take ownership of that and think about, where do I want to go? Do I want to go into line management? Do I want to be a specialist practitioner? Do I want to be, the assistant director like Marita is in the future? And how can my PiP journey and my PiP knowledge help me to get there? And I suppose early on in your career it can be hard to think like that, and some people just want to get the bit done and have a break from it. But we do see quite a lot of people who will engage with that mandatory component initially, and then they might go, I'm never doing anything again. And I'm sure I have certainly said that to myself almost every time I've finished something, and I'm always back doing something else, and I'm sure other people are the same. But people then get the bug and they think, I'd really like to learn more. I'd like to finish that award. I'd like to go and do a specialist award. And then once you've done your specialist award, you're thinking, I may as well now start my leadership award. And so we have this way of keeping people engaged, and also recognising that people are out there doing amazing learning every day. Their employers are providing wonderful learning opportunities. Our providers in terms of our programmes are doing that. And it's really nice to be able to recognise that. And obviously we have our PiP Awards ceremony every year. And unlike the Social Work Awards, the PiP Awards, you have to really put your heart and soul into studying for those and getting those. And that's a really nice day for social work to be able to say, well done to everybody who has given up their free time, their families and friends who have put up with them having to cancel events or not seen them for 2 nights because they've been writing an assignment. So there's all of that, and that's a really lovely opportunity for us as the Social Care Council to be able to say a huge well done to everyone who has put the work in throughout the year.
What difference, I wonder, has the internet made to all of this? You were talking about the fact that it's 20 years since the framework developed, and now you have the NISC Learning Zone and all of that different availability online at the kind of click of a button, basically. Has that helped as a sort of encouragement? Does it make it easier for people?
It's much easier to access, both in terms of the information about the framework and how it works. Although I think for social workers in their busy day jobs, having a human being, like Marita or Annie or myself or somebody in their employers who they can just go and please talk me through how to do this and where to go next. That is a really valuable resource to have. But also then, in terms of accessing knowledge out there, there's so much open source information now. So when I was coming up through practice, I was in the community and voluntary sector, and we didn't have access to a lot of the online journals and stuff that maybe someone in a trust would have access to. So that has really changed, that access to information and knowledge and what's happening elsewhere in the world. Including all the stuff that we do in the Social Care Council to help people through that. There is just much more contact now with information that people, and not all of it good, but some of it really useful and some of it really beneficial for someone trying to study and learn something new. So that's opening doors for people all of the time.
Well, that's great to hear, isn't it? I just want to ask you all, sort of finally, if I could, what advice do you have for social workers to progress through PiP? I mean, the new ones, as we've been hearing, will need to do this compulsory component and then they move on. There are still others who aren't newly qualified, who are dipping their toes in at a later stage in their careers, like you did, Annie. I mean, what advice do you have for them to get through the framework, get up the trellis and end up where they want to be?
I think just do it. Just get started. Ask, link in with your local PiP rep, do some reading around your topic, find what it is that you want to learn more about, and then maybe start reading around your topic. I think that the more you read around your topic, the more educated you are in terms of being able to do the piece of work. I also think don't rush it. Take your time to work on your submission. Rush submission, you don't have the same opportunity for learning. And just accept that there is going to be an impact on your work-life balance. That's just part of the process, but the payoff for that's well worth it.
Oh, that's good to hear. Marita, what about you?
I think I would be saying embrace the opportunity with hope and optimism, and really, I suppose, somewhere in it, I'm hoping that people will feel a wee bit lucky that we have this opportunity. I think our staff should become courageous in terms of their expectations of the support that they can receive from their organisation. So be courageous, ask for the support, try and make that work-life balance as manageable as possible, because that is really, really important. And I suppose the other thing, as I think about the PiP programme is, I always found when I engaged in a programme, I felt like I was being stretched. And I suppose today has made me think, like any good exercise class, you never want to go and do it, but you always feel the better for it afterwards. So I think embrace the stretch and know that it will be there for you, but all for the greater good.
That's a really good way of putting it, I must say. Gillian, what about you? What advice would you have for social workers who want to progress through PiP?
So I would say, first of all, don't be put off by the breadth and scope of the framework. It is designed, to enable anyone working anywhere to engage in something. So don't get caught up in how much it offers, really. Take the support of someone who can guide you through what it is you want to do. Don't be put off by other people who maybe are not as engaged as you. Don't allow that to influence your thinking around what you're going to do with your career and your own professional development, and find something that you're really passionate about and you really care about, because that makes it easier to give up those hours that are of your own time, where you have to read, another journal article or another book, and you think I just can't read one more thing. But so it's really important that you identify the thing that is going to keep you interested and that you feel is going to make you a better practitioner. And quite often for people that is about being better for their service users and developing their values and their knowledge in a particular area. So I would say, don't be daunted by it. Seek the support. There's so much support out there. There are people like Annie who have done almost all of the framework, and they'll be able to guide you through, what might work for you. And just dip your toe in and get started, because it's never as hard as people think it's going to be. And the rewards are brilliant. You really feel the sense of achievement at the end of it. And there really is an opportunity for people who never thought that their careers would go a certain direction or would get into particular roles. There really is an opportunity for people to learn the skills to move through the profession, and I think that's a really important part of the framework for people as well.
Enjoy the stretch. Gillian, Marita and Annie, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for listening. And remember, you can find out more about the PiP Framework on the NISCC Learning Zone. And of course, all the Care to Chat podcasts are available on the NISCC website or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe. It's free, to rate us and tell all your friends and colleagues.